talk about this next one?
What's that?
You want to talk about the next one was Sad Greg.
Yeah, yeah. So similar, very similar. Three actions. So it's Sad Greg because I actually only use this sound for my buddy Greg. Actually, sorry, four actions. But so long story short, I started playing disc golf a long time ago. Frisbee golf for anybody that doesn't know. And it's just a lot of fun, and it's something we do, anytime the weather's nice for the most part. And so my buddy Greg, he's is like 60s. I think he just turned 62 a couple weeks ago. And he's pretty good at disc golf, but he's like super competitive with me, but he's just like never gonna be as good. And it's funny, and so we have this little rivalry, and so every once in a while, like at least once per round, I'll wait till after he throws, and then I'll play this sound, and it's the sad trombone sound. So
let's try it out. That works well, and you could camouflage it by giving it a different name.
Right.
So that way you could be like, oh, almost, and your phone automatically goes wah 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 wah.
Oh, that'd be good. But it would probably trigger it at the wrong times and would have trouble triggering when I wanted to or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it would come up and create the most awkward social situations.
Yeah, okay, so on that note, so I have it set to my, this is a twofold story. I have it set to my action button on my watch, my Ultra 2, so I can also just trigger it from there. And so there's definitely been times where I've accidentally triggered that. And then one I might add to this after the fifth one we have here that we can go over is I have one that it's a little more complex, but at the base it's pretty simple. God, where is it? So it's called we'll go over it later, I guess, but it's called Siri Insults. And so it does connect to an API, but it just takes like an evil insult and then has Siri read it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And that was assigned to my action button. And 4 or 5 months ago, my girlfriend and I, had only been together for a couple months at that point. And I was down at her house, and it was on my action button. I had just got my watch like a week before, so I was testing different things out, and she was just talking and whatever, and I was kind of listening, and I was doing something else or whatever, and I think I was moving something, and somehow I triggered the action button, and she's just like blah 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 blah, and then all of a sudden Siri goes, "Everything you said was just irrelevant." Like something, and it was like so on point, and she was all, "What the hell?" And I had to like explain to her. I was like, "No, that was an accident. Like, I'll show you. It's not." I just kept ran it a couple more times, and it's.
You're like, no, seriously, I'm just a hopeless nerd. That's all this is. Don't worry. No red flags here.
Anyway, it was pretty good.
So, you want to talk briefly about how this shortcut works?
Yeah. So back to Sad Greg. So similarly, it sets the volume to 100% just to make sure, and then I have the Base64 encoded sound in a text action, and then it decodes it, and then just plays it. And so that way it's all encompassed in the shortcut. It doesn't have to grab a sound file from anywhere.
Right.
And it works every single time.
And how can someone make one of these Base64 strings?
So, yeah, great question. So I downloaded the file years ago from somewhere, and then used a different shortcut to then just take that file and then encode it into Base64, and then just paste it in there.
So you could do something like select stop moving right before I click.
I hate that.
You could do something like select a file.
Yeah.
Encode it. and copy it to your clipboard.
Yep.
And so if you have a sound file, you could do it that way. If you wanted to record your own thing, then you could just replace the select file with record audio.
Oh, that's I see. I never thought of that. That's really neat.
And so now instead of selecting a file, we just record some audio, encode that as base64, which turns it into, like here, it turns it into a text string, a very long text string, enormous. And then you get a text string that corresponds to a sound file. And the way base64 works, at the very beginning of it, the initial part of the base64 tells you what kind of file it is.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was looking for ways to check input on a shortcut that could take base64 as input, and I wanted to make sure that it could only possibly be like a PNG image file, and you can just check for the right beginning, because this corresponds to the header of the actual file,
So
and the header of every file tells you what kind of a file it is.
So at that last slash before the P5M.
Oh, I don't actually know how much of it is the header.
Okay.
I just know that you can use the very beginning of it to determine roughly what the file type is.
To me, that makes sense though. That last slash, because there's no more slashes for the most part. Well, I guess there is. Like,
Yeah, it picks the slashes as good places to stick line breaks.
yeah.
But yes, so this is a trick you see people doing a lot, because it's essentially how to stick a file, whether it's an image or a piece of audio or a video or whatever. It lets you take any file or any type of media that you want and turn it into a text string. And now you can just stick it inside of a shortcut, like what's being done here. And you decode it instead of encode it.
Yep.
And because this contains everything you need to know about the file, including the file type, we don't have to tell it that it's a sound. It'll just figure out that it's a sound. If I were to stick in a base64 string that corresponded to an image, it would still decode it, but then an image object would pop out of this action. And then that would crash the shortcut once we tried to play the image as a sound. And so it's... And one trick, like, because you can see this thing's huge. One nice touch that you can have on a shortcut is you can stick your base64 strings inside of a nested dictionary, so that way it hardly takes up any vertical space at all in your shortcut. Because when you have like 50 different files in your shortcut, and then you have 50 of these huge text action blocks, it starts to become a real pain in the butt to try and drag blocks around. Or just to scroll your shortcut and see what's going on. So you can stick everything in a dictionary, or you can nest it inside of like an if statement if you felt like it.
Right. Yeah.
I've also seen people do this.
Just a repeat block, yeah.
Repeat one time.
And then just collapse it.
Yeah, and now you can stick whatever you want to do in here, and it all just disappears.
Huh. So that interesting.
But that's more of just like aesthetics, and who really cares, because you don't anticipate that the person's going to have to look at your shortcut.
Yeah, well, hopefully they do, but yeah.
That's true. That's kind of the point of this session, isn't it?
Don't most people look at the shortcut when they first open it up?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah, I imagine most of the people watching this broadcast are probably the types that would look at the shortcut, but like thinking of my family members and stuff, like they just want a photo collage. They don't really care how it's made.
Yeah, they trust you.
Yeah, and so you just send it to them, and like the way that, of course, in classic Apple fashion, the way that they allow you to see what's in the shortcut before you add it is sort of overwhelming or sneaky, one or the other. Because if it's a big shortcut, then you show it to someone, and it's not really honest to expect them to go through the whole thing and understand how it's going to work. And then you also have to click the little 3 dots when you add the shortcut, otherwise you can't see what's inside of it. And like most buttons in Apple's software, you can't really tell that it's a button until you start tapping things.